Sarah Gadon, I'm going to just start by asking you, who do you think Alias Grace is?
Well, I know that she immigrated from Northern Ireland to Toronto in the 1800s. I think that the title of the book is obviously very clever because it points to the notion that Grace Marks, when she was caught by the police, gave the alias Mary Whitney. And the whole exploration of the book is about identity and about how we form our identity, how we claim our identity. And so the title of the book, Alias Grace, is really a play on Grace and who she really is, if she really is who she says she is.
And what do you think we learn about her over the course of those 6 hours? Less so about the plot of what she did or didn't do, but more about what do we learn about her as a character over those 6 hours?
I think when I read the book for the first time and when I watched the show, I think that it's really about going on this journey. And it's just as much what you learn about Grace as it is what you learn about yourself as a person watching the show, and what you think about your own self and your own identity and what you want for Grace, because you're constantly projecting onto her. But I think the thing that is most inspiring about the show, as many different personas as she has, as much ambiguity as the show has, I think that really, when I think about Grace Marks, I think about everything that she's been through. And I really view her as a survivor because she's been subjected to so many hardships, but nothing ever really broke her. And so I see a real strength when I look at Grace and when I think about Grace, and that strength really stays with me.
What was it like performing these sort of present day scenes compared to filming and performing the scenes when she was much younger, and what happened to her in the past?
It was a lot to keep straight because I play the character from the time she's about 15, 16 to 40. So, and the way that the story is told is it's not a linear narrative. It jumps back and forth. Thankfully, we shot it. We didn't shoot it according to script pages. We shot it based on location, which helped me really get a sense of where the character was at in that moment. So, for example, we shot the Kinnear farm first. Then we went to the Parkinson house. Then we were in Kingston Penitentiary, and we finished with the interview. So as much as the story jumps around, I was able to really remain focused on playing an age, and that age is always contained in this really specific world. And that really helped me access the different versions of Grace.
And was there a particular version of Grace that you found most challenging as an actress?
I think I really grew to love every version of her. But I think the most difficult thing was playing her older, because I've never been at that age yet in my life. And you always kind of want to be cognizant of the fact that you might be playing into an idea of what somebody older might be, and you want it to stay really grounded and real. So that was the most daunting and I think the most challenging to play.
Yeah. What did you learn about being a 40-year-old?
that there's well, for Grace, because she's been through so much by the time she's 40, there's a weight to her, a gravitas. And with my dialect coach, who I worked with to kind of do the Northern Irish dialect, we also played with different voice registers for the different ages of Grace. And when she's 40, she has the lowest register in her voice.
Now, other than yourself, there are 3 women that are very instrumental to this mini-series. That's Margaret Atwood, who wrote the book, Sarah Polley, who adapted the series, and Mary Harron that directed the series. And Sarah wrote every episode. Mary directed every episode of the series. How big do you think those 3 female voices were in what we see in Alias Grace?
Huge. That makes the show so unique, not just because it's a limited series. I think that it's so rare to have one writer in television write the entire show. That's extremely unusual. Usually you have a writer's room, or you have a duo, or you have more than one writer. And Sarah has been a fan of the book since she was 17. That was the time that she first originally tried to option the rights. So she's been sitting on this project and allowing it to kind of germinate and allowing it to kind of play out in her mind for decades. So there's an intimacy that she has with the material, with the source material, than any other writer I've ever worked with, because it's not like she was just hired to adapt the book. This is a book that really changed her, informed who she was as a woman. And because she tried to get the rights to the book so young, she also started a relationship with Margaret that's gone on for many years as well. And Mary directed all 6 episodes, which again in television is very unusual. You don't have a director always direct an entire series. And to have, I think, the strength of those singular voices championing the project at each different point, from Margaret writing the book to Sarah writing the show to Mary directing it, I think that there's a real continuity. And I think it's really important because Grace is such a complicated character. It almost would have been impossible if there were too many cooks in the kitchen trying to sort her out. So I think that was really valuable to me as an actor. I just had, this kind of team of 3 really solid people who had a real intimacy with the material, guiding me through the process.
Yeah. And what do you think this, sorry?
Oh, no, I didn't say anything.
Okay. What do you think this process, what do you think this series, Alias Grace, it's about women or a woman in 1843, but how do you think it speaks to women in 2017?
Well, I think right now, culturally, we're at a time where we are still negotiating what our reproductive rights are, what our immigration policies are. How do we treat people who come to our countries for the first time? What is their experience like? How has that changed? And these, I think, are things that we don't necessarily feel strong and solid about, especially collectively as a country. So I think that these are things that are at the forefront of our minds right now, because there's a lot of anxiety concerning gender politics. There's a lot of anxiety about immigration. And Alias Grace, if you were an immigrant and if you were a woman, you didn't even have any rights. So I think there's a real kind of continuity between the experience that the experience that we were having then. And I think that the show really remains relevant because of that.
Yeah. Do you have for an episode or scene from the series?
Yeah, I definitely do.
Oh, cool.
I think my show or sequences were the ones that I was the most afraid of when I read the script. And that was the opening of the series when Grace looks into the mirror and does all the different personas, the inhuman female demon, the innocent victim of a blackguard forced against your will. I thought, this is so impossible. How can she be all of these things? Are we going to use visual effects? Is she going to transform into these things? Is it going to seem theatrical or corny? And then I sat down with Sarah and Mary and we talked about what it actually was going to be. It was just going to be about that very kind of intimate and quiet moment where you're looking at yourself and you're taking yourself in and you're thinking about all the things that you hate about yourself, all the things that you love about yourself, all the things that people have told you about yourself, processing them. And then I think it became really accessible and really grounded and subtle. And when I watched the series back, I think, oh, it's really fascinating that they did that, because there's so many images throughout art history and film of women looking in the mirror. And they've usually been about vanity or an emblem of female beauty. Acknowledge that motif, but then they open it up and they say, we're going to invite you into female subjectivity. And Grace is going to inhabit all those personas you feel uncomfortable as a viewer. And it's going to take everything that you think you know about how women look at themselves and how women construct themselves, and it's going to complicate what your ideas of that are. And so from just a film history, a film theory buff, that to me gets me really excited, and that to me is the power of women making images. And then I think the second favorite sequence that I have is the hypnotism sequence, because it was really just this feat, I think, because it's about like 20 pages and it flips back and forth. And I said to Mary and Sarah, I said, how am I going to do this? Are we going to cut and then I'll have time to regroup before the next sequence? They were like, no, we want to shoot it all as one long sequence. And we want you to use Mary Whitney's voice. And Margaret wants you to use Mary Whitney's voice. So I worked with my dialect coach to access Rebecca's register. And then we shot it almost like a play. And it was really daunting leading up to it, because I thought, how am I going to do this? Am I going to make it through this? You know, it's going to be such a long take. But we did, and it's one of my favorite sequences in the show, and that's in episode 6.
Mm. Yeah, oh, it's nice. Sort of, you're from the beginning and the end.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. How did you come to get the role of Grace Marks?
Well, I had heard that Sarah Polley was adapting the book, and she had been on my radar for a long time. I was a huge fan of her work as an actor, and then a big fan of her as a director and writer. And so if there was going to be something that she was doing that I could be a part of, I was going to jump at the opportunity to try and be a part of it. And then I met with Sarah and Mary, and then I had an audition with them in a work session where we workshopped 3 scenes. And Sarah actually read with me in the audition, which was super intimidating. But it was really incredible to just work with them and try and crack this character. And I came away from the audition thinking, well, even if I don't get the part, it was pretty amazing to work with, you know, women that I really respect and admire. And even if it doesn't go my way, that was pretty freaking cool. So I'm really happy it did go my way and we were able to work together. But it was a very kind of rigorous audition experience.
Yeah. Well, do you remember the scene you had to read with Sarah?
Yeah, I read 3 scenes. I read the first scene between Simon and Grace, where he meets her in the penitentiary and he offers her an apple. I read a scene between Mary and Grace, where they're peeling things over their shoulders. And then I did a scene with Nancy Montgomery. I think it's the scene where I'm scrubbing the floor and she slaps me.
Yeah. Which role did Sarah do the best?
Oh God, you know, I remember thinking in the audition, she's such a great actor. You know, I really want to work with her as an actor because she's such a fantastic actor. But I think I really liked her playing the Nancy character because she was really good at it.
Okay. That's good. Now it's interesting because you're in this Margaret Atwood series. It's been very well received, and right off the back of The Handmaid's Tale having won so many Emmys, done so well, I know that Alias Grace and The Handmaid's Tale had no influence on each other because they're both being made at the same time and all sorts of things like that. But we're an awards website following Golden Globes, Emmys, Screen Actors Guilds, and all things like that. What's it like being in a series adaptation of a Margaret Atwood book when another Margaret Atwood adaptation has just done so well at the awards?
I think it was something that I was a bit worried about, kind of going into it, thinking, oh gosh, you know, are critics going to receive the show in light of Handmaid's Tale? Are they going to say, you know, oh no, we've had our female-driven adaptation of the year, and that's enough now. And I think a part of me, if I'm being honest, was a bit nervous about that. But the reception has been emphasis of that. It's really been as though the Handmaid Accord with everything that's happening right now in our culture. And people are almost hungry for more. They want more. They want to continue this dialogue. They want the discourse to continue. And I think because, you know, as I said before, we're feeling so much anxiety about gender politics, about reproduction right, about immigration, about how we treat each other. I think that The Handmaid's Tale is this look potentially beheaded. And Alias Grace is really this look back at where we've come from. And right now we're at a place where we're sitting in the middle. And we're sitting between these two fates, if you will. And so I think that even though they're very different, they are connected to each other. And there is this dialogue happening between the two shows. And as I said before, at first I was like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be a negative thing. But I think it's a real positive notion for me as a performer, as a woman, to see that people aren't saying, oh, that's enough, but people want more. They want more content like this. And I think that's a real positive thing.
Yeah. And the good news for both of the series at the Emmys is you won't be competing, the Golden Globes and things, is you won't be competing against each other because you guys are in the mini-series categories and it's in the drama series category. So
it's great. Margaret too. And I think that also makes me really inspired. I think sometimes we have this idea of what success is. And success is this kind of linear path that you are supposed to achieve, you know, this amount of success by this age, or that you know, accomplishment by this age. But, you know, Margaret's work is having this renaissance. She has been thrust into popular culture in this new way. And you know, she's in her 70s. And so it's exciting for me to think, you know, you just have to focus on doing good work and putting out work that you believe in and work that you feel is meaningful, and it will find its audience. It doesn't necessarily have to be this immediate thing. And that's been also a really inspiring and amazing kind of thing to see for me as a young woman.
Mm. Yeah. What, is there a particular aspect or moment you treasure the most from your time on Alias Grace?
I just think she's so witty. She's so straightforward, and her humor is so dry in this kind of amazing classic Canadian way. And I love that about her.
Yeah. I love when she's talking, it's not quite witty, but like when she's talking about the beds, how life starts and ends in beds and all the things that, like, I thought that was really, the writing there was really, really strong.
The show was such a challenge. It was truly the hardest job I've ever had. And anytime that I would get daunted by it, or I was overwhelmed, or I thought I can't do this, I would look at the work and I would look at the writing. And so much of the writing is lifted straight from the book, straight from the pages, straight from the words that Margaret wrote. And I thought, I would say to myself, you know, this is some of the most beautiful dialogue that I will ever have the opportunity and privilege of saying. So it doesn't matter how hard it is. I need to relish this because it's a privilege.
Does it put pressure on you as an actress to go, oh boy, the words are so good, I can't screw these up?
Of course, yeah. I think it was the biggest, you know, it was the biggest relief when Margaret watched the show and loved it and embraced it, because as much as, you know, you want the show to find its audience and, you know, the accolades are, you know, overwhelmingly, you know, incredible, it's really Margaret that you need to impress. And she is really the most important critic of our show. And so it was really a relief when she embraced it.
Yeah, because you can have beautiful sheet music, but the orchestra can follow the piece. You need a good orchestra to play it.
Amen.
Yeah. We've got I was also going to ask. You just said when you were rewatching it, what did you appreciate most about when you watched it? The show. Was there anything that surprised you, or that, you know?
I think maybe it didn't surprise me, but the real goal of the whole kind of show, the real kind of point of telling Grace's story, and what Margaret asked us the most in prep before we went to shoot, was to maintain Grace's ambiguity. That being the most important goal for all of us in making the show. And when I watched the show back, especially because of the way that we shot certain sequences, you know, there's a tremendous amount of trust as an actor when you hand over your performance to somebody and they, you know, cut it all together. And when I watch the show back and I really feel the ambiguity, and I think that's really the greatest achievement, and that's what I was most happy about to see, is that the ambiguity is really there. So that was probably the best payoff moment when we were watching the show back.
Last question. If you were to make a patch, quilt work patch of your time on Alias Grace, what would you sew?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. I have to tell you, nobody has asked us that. Nobody has asked me that. And I think that's so, that is so smart. I would say I would do a piece of my bonnet, a scrap from my bonnet. I would do a scrap from Grace's brand new green dress that she gets at the Parkinson's house. I would put a scrap of the final quilt that she makes at the end of the show for herself. And I would have to put Nancy Montgomery's dress in there as well. Oh, and I think I would also do, I would definitely do a swatch from clothes. You know what, maybe it would be his shirt probably, because he was so important to Grace.
Who is that? Sorry, you cut out just a little bit with that last bit.
Dr. Jordan's clothing, maybe.
Yeah.
From the most important person to Grace.
Yeah. There you go. There we go. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. That sounded like a great patchwork quilt thing. The perfect items. Thank you so much, Sarah, for talking with us, and all the best of luck for the Golden Globes and the Screen Actors Guild Awards that are just around the corner.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy we were able to do this.
Yeah, no, it's great, wasn't it? It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I've pressed